I spent 4 years building something that made my company a ton of money, patents, awards, the whole thing. I missed 100 nights at home. I gave them everything. And at review time they handed me a 3% raise and told me to try harder next year. That's when I stopped being their unpaid volunteer, and started getting paid like I deserved. I never planned to make the rest of my life about one job. I started as an engineer because I liked solving problems. I liked the clarity of a math problem, the quiet logic of a drawing, the satisfying snap when a prototype finally behaves the way it was supposed to. Early in my career, I took a job with a defense contractor because it was stable, the work mattered, and, honestly, because the benefits were good. You don't pick a small company if you've got a mortgage and a family to think about, you pick the place that pays you to keep a roof over people's heads. For 4 years, I did the usual, the 2 to 4% raises that feel like someone pretending to pat you on the back while the inflation eats the pat. The promotions crept along at geological speed. When you're on that track, you learn to celebrate tiny wins, a sentence of praise in a quarterly email, more responsibilities, thanks at the end of a meeting. It's not glamorous. It's just the way corporate life is supposed to roll. But somewhere in year 3, I realized something. Looking at the org chart, the job descriptions, the people in the slots above me, I was effectively capped. There was a ceiling. Not a challenge I could work harder to beat, but a plateau. If I stayed where I was, I'd scrape by for years. I didn't want that. I wanted to move, to grow, to make different choices for my family and myself. So I pushed. I raised my hand. I told my manager I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to be on the management track. A few months later they handed me a project engineer position, a prove yourself title. Fine. That's what I wanted, a chance. They gave me a team, 4 engineers, a designer, 2 admins. I was the lead. No one handed me anything for free. We worked like people who knew we had to earn it every day. We pulled long hours. We coordinated tests across states, built prototypes that sometimes failed spectacularly, and then fixed what failed. We tracked suppliers, negotiated with vendors, and re-engineered solutions when production screamed at us. It was drag-your-feet hard work, the kind that turns weekends into 2-day troubleshooting marathons. It also turned into something that actually mattered. Our team designed a system that took off faster than anyone expected. In our first year, the product brought in $1.6 million in sales. We landed a patent. Someone at the Air Force noticed, and the company got nominated for a DoD Technical Team Award. We flew to Washington, D.C., for a ceremony. We photographed the plaques and posed in suits that felt tight from too many late nights eating whatever was left in the airport vending machine. We were, by any objective measure, wildly successful. It came at a cost. I was gone from home for more than 100 days that year. Testing sites were 2 states away, customers wanted face time, vendors scheduled their own availability and expected us to rearrange. I remember the weight of suitcases in the trunk, the habit of looking at my phone before I slept, trying to capture a few moments of my kid's day through a screen. I remember waking up in motel rooms and missing the sound of my backyard wind chimes. It was brutal in a way that doesn't show on a resume. So when annual reviews rolled around, I read my evaluation and felt that small, justified swell of pride. 10 out of 10. The numbers supported it. The award supported it. The client emails praising the work, those were real. I honestly believed the promotion would follow. Everything fell apart, not with a scandalous moment, but a slow, corporate shrug. One of my team members, someone who technically reported to a different manager, someone I'd mentored, was promoted early to a senior role. I wasn't. I got the standard 3% raise, and a smile. That rumor that say promotion wasn't for me cut clean through me like cold water. I remember the exact conversation with my boss because it crystallized everything I'd been feeling. I sat in his office across from his desk while the air conditioning hummed an indifferent background tune. I looked at your review, he said. You did excellent work. You were a 10. But I don't manage that guy. He's on a different structure. We'll see next year. He paused like he'd said something encouraging. I wanted to laugh and throw a stapler. I wanted to list the nights I'd missed, the meetings I'd covered, the budgets I'd cleaned up. Instead, I asked the one rational question, why him, and not me? He shrugged in a corporate way that meant he recognized unfairness but felt trapped in the structure. I don't think he fully deserved it, he admitted. But he's in a slot that the business needed filled. Keep working hard. We'll revisit it. It was the old corporate line, keep doing what you're doing. Translation, keep giving us your best work for the least increase we can reasonably claim. I left the office angry and weirdly clear. That day, something switched in me. I could keep playing a game that rewarded patience and time served, and maybe, if I was lucky, I'd get an eventual promotion and marginally less anxiety, or I could change the stakes. I didn't want to be the guy who arrived early and left late for a pat on the head and a pittance. I didn't want my family to keep paying the cost for someone else's budget spreadsheet. So I did something simple and radical, I quit the part of the job that wasn't mine to keep. I went to work, did my 40 hours, and I went home. No more volunteer overtime. No more, for the team, weekends. I took my Fridays whenever I could. I used sick days I'd been saving like some backward currency. I stopped traveling unless it was necessary. I behaved exactly like the job description said I should, and no more. The effect was surprisingly immediate. My mental health improved. I stopped drinking the corporate Kool-Aid. Without the frantic hours, I could sleep again. I rediscovered the little rituals I'd let slide, a Sunday morning with the paper, a proper meal with my family, the ease of being present. It didn't make the sting of the promotion sting any less bitter, but it moved the balance of my life back toward things that mattered. I also did something else, something that looked tiny at first but turned out to be strategic. Our group had a training and education budget that didn't get fully used. The company funded MBAs for some folks, but those came with strings, stay with us for X years after completion or repay the tuition. I didn't want to be contractually tied, I wanted skills that paid on their own merit. So I signed up for classes that weren't bound to long-term loyalty, FEA, finite element analysis, and 3D modeling. The training budget covered it without the stay clause. Funny aside, the colleague who had been promoted early, a decent guy I really liked and respected, enrolled in an evening MBA, which the company reimbursed, but again, he was tied to a stay contract. We made an odd pair, him staying long-term by contract, me quietly taking practical software skills with no strings. We traveled around together to these workshops, sitting in cramped classrooms, both of us with notebooks and laptops. It was a strange time of companionship, we were learning the same tools from different angles. He liked the managerial language of the MBA, he wanted titles. I liked the sweat of your forehead practical skills, how to model a part in 3D, how to set up an FEA run that told you where a design would fail. The cardboard certificates at the end of the courses felt small, but the skills were real. A month after the certificate programs wrapped up, I started applying for jobs. Quietly. I didn't blast it across social media or tell anyone on the leadership team. I wanted to test the market first. I updated my resume not with platitudes but with specific skills, FEA competence, Abacus/NSYS modeling, SolidWorks complex part design. Instead of vague leadership claims, I listed the patent, the sales figures, and the travel-heavy testing schedule. I made it concrete. What happened next felt like the moment of vindication everyone imagines in a late-night revenge movie, except it wasn't fantasy, it was just market reality. Within a few weeks, a competitor offered me a position at roughly double my base salary. Not 2%. Not 3%. 200% more. And yes, they paid overtime on top of that. The offer was for a role that valued the exact skills I just invested in, the software modeling skills and the hands-on engineering judgment. When I walked into my manager's office to put in my notice, his face told the story before the words did. He seemed angry, then surprised, then hurt in a way that's always awkward when someone in power realizes they are not as indispensable as they assumed. "We paid to train you," he said. "You traveled for training on our dime. Don't you feel any loyalty to us?" The loyalty argument always sounds like a moral cudgel. Loyalty is a two-way street, and I'd already taken the street and looked both ways. "We invested in you," he said, as if that entitles them to someone's life. He asked if the new company's offer was more than he made. When I told him, he went silent, because it was more than he made. That was the best part. I didn't gloat. I didn't dance around the parking lot. I shook his hand, collected my few remaining files, and walked out. With the overtime and the base increase, my life changed. The following year I made about 3 times what I had been earning. With that extra income came choices, a chance to pay down debt, to save, to stop saying no to a trip with my family for fear of bills. It wasn't petty revenge in the Street Fighter sense, it was a clean, practical answer to the slaps of a system that had undervalued me. There are a few things I want to be honest about. First, I wasn't perfect. I took advantage of a corporate training budget, and yes, it's fair to say the company expected a return on that investment. But they also expected my extra hours, my unpaid travel sacrifices, and a kind of loyalty that never seemed to flow back toward me in fair measure. Second, my choice wasn't motivated purely by money. It was about respect. It was about not being someone's convenient, long-suffering placeholder. The quiet quit phase, doing strictly what the job demanded, no more, no less, was valuable for me. It recalibrated my life, and it let me think strategically rather than emotionally. Once you stop trying to prove your worth to people who decide on arbitrary calendars, you can make better choices. I used the company's tools to level the playing field, then I walked over to a company that valued the currency I carried. And here's the kicker. Revenge doesn't always look like sabotage or dramatic confrontation. Most times, the sweetest payback is very boring. It's a letter of resignation, a signature on a new contract, and a paycheck that finally matches your work. It's the quiet knowledge that you were worth more than they offered and now you have the receipts to prove it. If you're sitting in a job where your time and your life are being traded for empty promises, let this be the permission you didn't know you needed. Protect your time. Invest in skills with real market value. Use what your employer provides, but don't be naive about the strings. And remember that loyalty is earned both ways. If the company doesn't show it, don't expect it from yourself. When you finally value yourself, the world will pay attention. If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? I read every reply.